My name's Dirk, and my background is, how many people here have actually heard of B-Lab? Oh, good. Wow. I guess I know half the people here, so that's probably, that's probably why. That's really great that you've heard of that. I'll give you good context for the discussion this afternoon. I was a volunteer on their public policy team like 3 or 4 years ago when I was first at the beginning, my law degree actually here at Pepperdine, helped write their white paper and their legislative memorandum, which was used to help get the legislation passed. It's not passed in 13 states, more on that later. But I've got a background in the legal side of that and wrote this scholarly publication on that that helps educate lawyers on the benefit corporation legal entity. So yeah, I'm a JD MBA, my last month of studies here at Pepperdine. So Jacqueline, my business partner, has co-founded B Revolution Consulting with me, and her background is in angel investment and capital raising. So she actually founded and ran an angel investment network before I looped her into coming and helping me start one for B corporations, and that's her background for delivering the pitch competition in the business planning and capital raise portion of the workshop. Rob is, again, a professor here at Pepperdine's Business School. He's written a really intelligent article I encourage you guys to read on multi-attribute decision analysis for sustainable businesses, which basically looks at how do you weigh different factors in decision making and figuring out how you can become profitable and really high impact at the same time. So fancy word for a basic concept that's really important for all of you guys. Also earned his MBA here at Pepperdine, and Jacqueline's is from Thunderbird. Okay, snapshot of B Revolution. So we've got 2 big projects, and again, to help you contextualize the workshop and what we're doing here today. So B Revolution Capital is our angel investment network. Right now we've got about 30 active participants in that, both individuals and institutional investors. So banks, funds, family offices are about maybe 10, 15% of that, and then the remainder are early, individual early stage investors, so angels and super angels. They're interested in investing mostly in post-revenue or at least beta companies, but some will take the risk and do a pre-revenue, looking at ventures with a target raise of $50,000 to $1 million. Again, pretty typical for an angel investment group. And the nuance of B Revolution Capital is that we're really focused on impact enterprises, and for us that means having 4 attributes. 1, a strong business model that's scalable. 2, internal impacts. 3, external impacts that are integrated into your business model. And 4, importantly, baking in your mission and that impact strategy into your legal architecture. And so the B Corporation is one of the strongest and most robust ways to do that. And it's also fairly simple. So we require companies to either adopt the benefit corporation legal form or agree to become a certified B corporation when they place capital. So that's the nutshell on B Revolution Capital. B Revolution Consulting is sort of the flip side of that. So a lot of ventures need help with whether it's financial modeling, market research, developing their pitch, getting coaching for their pitch, or getting B Corporation certified, developing a sustainability strategy, figuring out how do we impact this cool idea that we have about how to create impact with our business model so that they're actually linked and not sort of disparate, separate sets of operations. And that's a snapshot for B Revolution Consulting. That's us in a nutshell. So I'm going to leave this to Alan, who's going to kick it off on team recruitment. And so give Alan a round of applause. Forward, backward. You even got a laser pointer. So.
I have a laser pointer. Okay. This is me. I'm an executive recruiter. This was my, can you hear me? Okay. This was my 2011 holiday card to everyone. I got a lot of nice laughs out of it, and that's what's important to me, because as you can tell, I'm going to do a little background on myself. I was a television comedy writer for a bunch of years. Hated it, left comedy writing, became a executive recruiter in digital media. And if you guys have been around LA for a while, as an adult, we had a group called Larkin Associates, and we were the leading kind of force of digital media in Los Angeles. Worked with Reardon, created the Digital Coast Roundtable, so did that. Got tired of that, drank the Kool-Aid, started my own companies over a period of time. created Jitterfingers, which was a safe social networking site for tween girls and their best friends. This was about 2005 during kind of MySpace, Facebook, who were all promoting openness, and I'm saying, no, you can't do that because these are tween girls and they're pedophiles, and we know that a lot of technology advances basically start out with pornography. So I went the other route, and I certainly didn't do as well as either of those companies. Came back to recruiting, and here we are. So basically, when I've given this, I hate this. I'm gonna put this here. Much better. Basically, when I go over my background, one of the questions, say, is, how did you go from being a writer to being a recruiter? And that's a pretty fair question, and I came up with my own answer to it, which is basically a writer creates a story, creates characters, and then puts them together. And then I rationalized to myself that recruiting is very similar. In essence, the difference is, instead of creating a story, you're given a story. Whether you're a startup company, whether you're Procter & Gamble, there's a story there. And part of that story is trying to fill a specific position. So as opposed to creating characters, my job was to go out into the marketplace and find characters that fit that company. In both cases, as a writer, as a recruiter, as it says, writers write and recruiters make phone calls. Success as a writer, you get fame and fortune, maybe you date Taylor Swift, I don't know. But even more compelling and more enjoyable is when you close a search and you've helped a company. We can't really see that, but that says basically the story is, as a recruiter, and I'm also thinking of you guys as a recruiter, because in many cases, you have to do your own recruiting, is that you really have to realize that you go out, you talk to people, you do the work, and at the end, you come up with results, whether it's a candidate, whether it's a referral, or whether it's just more knowledge of your business. So, for a self-recruiter or myself, and for early stage companies, it's really hard to get people to join your organization. A lot of times you're not offering them money, you're offering them a dream, and once again, it's hard to get that dream to happen. So our goal now is to go, how do you create your company's story so that when you go out and when you're talking to someone, that they are in fact buying who you are. Some of the things I do and I recommend to people is the first thing is create a one sheet for your company. Now you might say, hey, my company barely exists. I'm the only one working at it. What do I need a one sheet for? Well, going through the act of doing a one sheet, quite honestly, is just discipline. So when you're talking to people, it's like, oh, we're dealing with some partners, and I've got this one's interested, and Mattel might be interested, I know them. Put it on a piece of paper so someone believes what you're saying. What is your market cap? Or what is the market cap that you're looking at? It's one thing to say I have a great product and we're going to own the market. Well, these aren't lifestyle businesses, especially if you're looking to bring in money. How big is the market? What do you need to do to succeed in your market? Competitors. Who else is out there? And as you look at this, once again, it's kind of like, gee, this is kind of like what you need for raising money. Well, if you think about it, if someone has the money, writing a check isn't that big a deal. I mean, they have the money, they write the check, that's what they're supposed to do. But what you're really asking someone is to change their life, come work for you, come be part of who you are. So your job is to make that as easy as possible. People are also going to want to know about you. I gave you in a minute or so my history, starting with the dinosaurs, starting with, gee, it's different being a writer and being, I mean, that's all my thing. That's all what kind of defines my story in the marketplace. I've had the story before, the writer and the recruiter, and there's a good majority of people who could care less, don't think it's interesting, and basically, I don't end up working with them. But that's okay. You need to go out. When you're talking to someone, you need to tell them about your motivation. Why are you doing this? What's driving you? Why do you have the ability to make this stuff happen? People are going to want to know it. You're going to want to sell it. And it's really a huge deal to give yourself as part of your recruitment pitch. You're going to want to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the management team. That one's pretty straightforward. You know, what do you need? What are you bringing in? How does this person coming in affect the team? Where do you go from there? Skills and abilities of the candidates. Have a good idea of what you're looking for. Functional skills, marketplace skills. What is, you know, the type of corporate culture they're going to work well in? Quite honestly, if you can come up with someone who has $10 billion, they'd be a good part of the fundraising team. This is all part of the team that you're trying to create. Compensation is a huge issue. Be prepared. Do you have cash? Do you not have cash? Are you going to have the person accrue cash? Are they not going to accrue cash? Is there going to be equity? You know, obviously, who that person is, what their needs are, it all changes. But be aware and talk about these type of things to yourself, so then when you're talking to someone else, you can have that discussion. And finally, I like to say go for the zeitgeist. And that's really easy in this group of people, because on one hand, you're here because you want to be business people, because you have a great idea, but you also are here because you want to make a social impact. So for you, if this isn't something you're driving with as you're trying to close a candidate, they're not going to get it. So go for it. How do you find these candidates? There are lots of different ways. We're just going to talk about LinkedIn. I mean, basically, we'll talk about all of them. One of them is you go to places like this. You go to meetings. You make yourself visible. You go to all the events you can go to. You just get yourself active. And then there's LinkedIn. This is what I use. And it's pretty straightforward. And so we're just going to talk about it. Buy the business subscription. It's $24.99. It's a great deal. They have all you can eat for thousands of dollars a year. You don't need to spend $1,000 a year. So do it. Just best investment ever. You then need to get your hit list of what you're looking for, where you're located, job title, responsibility, industry. And then you start to have to think about who are your competitors in the market? Who are the legacy companies that your product is going to displace? Who are the companies that are just getting creamed as far as mergers, acquisitions, whatever is going on? All of these people become a little more fluid if their own work is fluid. You then go to the advanced, hey, we're going to go there. God, that was great. Let's do that again. Boom. Okay, you go to the advanced bar, and you click on the side where it says advanced. And that gives you a version of this screen, though it doesn't look this way. This is the truncated version of this PowerPoint. What you do is you fill in a keyword, market research. You fill in location, and then you get a list. In this case, you get a list of 54,000 people who have skills as a business development person in the market research world. Well, it's going to be really hard to go through that and talk to all those people. So let's do this. Oh, we didn't do that. Like I said, truncated version. If anyone's interested, I do have a longer, complete LinkedIn. This is how you use LinkedIn step to step. But basically, you go in, you start putting in the names of companies, you start going through the people's profiles, and there are 3 or 4 areas where you're going to find lots of ways to find people. Look at the groups that every candidate joins, or any person whose profile you're looking at on LinkedIn. Some join 1, some join 20. There are recruiters who join 75 to 100. These are going to have people who you want to know, and 2/3 of them you can just sign up and they'll let you in the group. So all of a sudden, your entire network of appropriate people has increased. In this case, I'm reading about the groups, and this is the market research, trade organization. So I went on there, and sure enough, there are 325 market research companies. You can go to their website, you find out who they are. Just keep working the process. People also viewed sometimes, those are the exact same people you're looking for. Recommendations, people similar, connections, and I really liked Mary Dixon's profile. So that's why we're going to talk about her. Why? She lives in Chicago, but she works for a company and she covers the West Coast. So think about that. Right there, that can be problematic for her. She's part of a new product group. And once again, we know that new products sometimes don't do as we hope they're going to do. She went to University of Georgia. So she went to University of Georgia. She's living in Chicago, selling LA. Somehow, there's a bunch of disconnect there. And when you find that disconnect, then you start to get interested. And most importantly, she's wearing pearls. And I've seen many LinkedIn profiles over the years, and I've never seen anyone wearing pearls before. So that just makes her interesting to me. Recruiting is hard. You have to amuse yourself. The other thing you need to do is identify your company, and then you have to start executing the search. And so what I did is, there are lots of management tools. I use Excel sheets because I do a search and then I do another search, and that's just what I do. So you go in first, last, companies, reference, phones, emails, status. For me, if I've called someone, I use yellow highlight. If I've connected with them, I use green highlight. So I constantly can see who I've talked to, who I haven't talked to, who I've left messages for. I will put in the point of reference where I found a person. If you found them on LinkedIn, that's interesting. If they're a speaker at a conference, well, that's also interesting, because eventually what you want to do is you're going to be calling these people. You're probably not going to be getting them on the phone and leaving a message. And you have about 30 seconds to cut through the clutter of their day, so they're going to call you back. So having a piece of information about them that you leave on that call, it's a big deal. And that's how you get people to call you back. Like I said, I used to write comedy, so I try to be funny on my phone messages. And I've had people call me back basically saying, look, I'll never call a recruiter back. But, in 20 seconds, you made me laugh. What would we be able to do in a whole conversation? Might not work for you, but once again, this is what works for me, what makes me kind of a unique company, and you're searching for kind of your own unique style, substance to get people to react to you. I write and practice my pitch. I type it out. I try to get it down to 30 seconds. I will retype it. I will, if I don't like how I sound on one phone call, I'll go back, I'll redo the whole pitch. Because once again, considering most of the time you're leaving a voicemail, you want to leave something for them that they're going to go, hey, I'm going to call this person back. And 30 seconds, keep it short. And, for Mary Dixon, who is our friend in the Pearls, I will do something like, hey, Mary, this is Alan Esrock. How are you? I'm an executive recruiter doing a really interesting search on the West Coast for a great market research company trying to extend their reach. And you're wearing your pearls. And I've never seen a LinkedIn picture with pearls. So I got to meet you. The odds are I'm going to get a return phone call, and we'll have a discussion about pearls, and we'll have a discussion about Georgia. And she may not be the right person, but there might be someone else in her company who's that right person. And that's what you're really aiming for. How do you make a connection? It's a sales talk. How do you make that connection in 30 seconds? And finally, you got to make the calls. You have to set up a time every day that you're going to spend an hour and a half making the phone calls. And no one wants to do that because it's time consuming, it's not very interesting. Many times you get people who hang up on you. You don't get through. I've gone through 3 or 4 hour call sessions where I didn't talk to one person. Oh well, you're going to have to do it the next day because talking about finding the right person and actually being proactive about it are two hugely different things. And once again, you just got to do it. Here's a short tip, our short list of tips. I have a full list of 20, 25 sitting someplace. This hiring stuff is important. I like to joke about it because that's what I do. But it is truly important. And as Ellen Patrikoff said, it is the key to getting funded. People want to see management teams. They want to know who's doing stuff. You're not going to get funded based on a concept. You're not going to get funded based on a product. You're going to get funded based on a well-working team in connection with everything else. You got to be honest with who you're talking to. The fact is, as we said earlier, you're kind of asking someone to give up their life, probably have, if they're married, having a big argument with their spouse about why they're doing this company. And it's hard. And under the best case scenario, it's hard. And the other thing is, your company is going to have problems. Nothing is going to be perfect. You owe it to the person you're talking to just say that, say honestly, this is where we're strong, this is where we're weak, this is how we're going to be better, this is where I'm concerned. Because if you have the honest conversation, they're probably going to have an honest conversation in return. And all of a sudden, you really are lining up candidate, company, if you're using a recruiter, and it really, you just got to do it. I mean, that's a takeaway. $500 is a lot of money. It's amazing the difference and the conversation you can have if you can go to someone who's made $200,000 a year and said, look, I know you can't do this for free. I know you have your kids in private school. I understand that. I'm kind of broke. However, I can give you $3,000 a month if that will help make you feel better about coming on board and working with us. I had a company 10 years ago called MediaCentrics, and it was a digital media company. And I just raised $40,000 in first seed capital. And the company was about working with radio stations and their websites and bringing them entertainment properties. And it was, probably the first company that used the term cross-platform programming. And I was at a conference, just like you guys go to, and I saw a guy standing outside smoking a cigarette. And I realized that I knew the guy who's the former president of licensing and merchandising for Fox. Big job. Just left the job, seeing what's going on in the world. He was actually working for another startup. And I had $40,000. And I realized that if I got this guy to work for me, then my life changed. So we talked for a while, and basically I said to him, I said, look, Al, you're working for a really stupid startup. If you're gonna work for a stupid startup, work for my stupid startup, because at least it needs everything you have to offer. So we cut a deal that he would join the company and I'd pay him $10,000 a month. Well, obviously, if that deal went too long, I wouldn't be raising any other money and I'd be out of business. He joined the company. Within a week, we had deals in place with NBC, with Fox, BMG, and we started talking to radio stations, and within 2 weeks, we had deals in place for 27 of the top 30 radio stations across the country. $10,000 was a quarter of the money I had. But in this case, I knew it was important. I made the deal. Okay. Sorry, got carried away. Thanks a lot.
Awesome job. So that was advice from Alan Esrock on how to raise, how to gain talent for your startup. And hope you guys are taking notes. Don't let the humility and humor fool you. Seasoned expert. So those of you who are taking notes, you came away with a steal. Okay, so I'm going to run through even quicker than planned the introduction to B corporations and benefit corporations. I'm going to hand it over to Rob Bickel to follow up on that on B corporation strategy. So just to get it started, I'm going to talk about the movement, some market trends that are driving the B corporation certification movement, the legislative adoption, the certification itself and business adoption of the certification, and then the vanguard firms that are actually making that adoption. I'm going to walk you through the B-Lab story, a quick mini deep dive on the legislation, and then we're going to talk about the entity itself. So the trends, it's being built, the B corporation certification movement is being built by a trend in consumers who are increasingly leery of businesses that are claiming to do good. And so there's a lot of research that shows that companies that have a third-party certification, so you can see this easily in organics, that are charging a price premium to have that label on their product, that this is really compelling for consumers because they have decreased trust in businesses that are claiming to do good, like claiming that they're natural. They'll actually pay a price premium for organic. So similar concept here with the B Corporation certification, because consumers aren't just concerned about whether the product is organic, they're concerned about whether the business that's producing that product is actually responsible. And the B Corporation certification provides that holistic assessment across 140 points of analysis. And which is, in fact, responding to this movement. I'm going to talk to that more when I talk about B-Lab and the founders of B-Lab. The other trend that's driving this is the investment revolution. So increasingly, individual investors, angels, family offices, funds, when they go out and raise capital from whether it's a pension fund or another family office or a bunch of angels to raise their venture fund, they need to tell a story. And so we've actually got a client that is a fund that wants to reposition their funds. So they have a story to tell their investors. They don't just want money. They want a story to tell to their stakeholders that's compelling. So we've seen that with the growth of the impact investment asset class, which JP Morgan, I think, estimated at $2.3 billion currently and continuing to grow over the next decade. So investors, they want to see the story. They also are looking for that same level of trust that the consumers are looking for. How do they know? There's all these problems with private company valuation. You go to one company to get a valuation. You go to another company to get a valuation. They're really discordant. How do you know the actual value of the company? The B Corporation certification, because it's comprehensive, it looks at the value chain, it looks at the employees. How do you treat your customers? It looks at everything, governance, transparency. It gives you another lens into the value of the company and how tight its value chain is, how good the relationships are with its stakeholders. And there's early evidence out of B-Lab showing that B corporations, certified B corporations, are 63% more likely to have survived the economic recession. So what does that mean to an investor? It's more sustainable financially, not just in the social and environmental sense. So that's the other trend that's driving this. The third trend and third sort of category of social cultural market trends is the talent revolution. So Alan spoke to this. What was the first slide? Someone who's taking notes. What was the first slide about? What do you do when you want to recruit talent? Did you get your time's worth here? I mean, you spent a half an hour listening to him. What was the first slide? What do you look for? What do you tell to the company? Story. Perfect. So talent wants a story. They want to work for a company that's actually responsible. They don't want to just go get that paycheck. They want to feel like they're having a difference in the world. This is increasingly true for people who are trained. So people coming out of MBA programs, law programs, accountants, people who have at least a bachelor's degree, people who have higher education want to believe that they're tapped into something that's actually going to change the world for the better. So again, another movement that's looking for some way to verify that this business actually stands by what they say they do, and are actually, legally and perhaps through a third party accountable to doing good. All right, so some Vanguard firms. These are some that you've probably heard of. There's over 700 that are now certified. Jessica Alba's Honest Tea, King Arthur Flour, you'll see that at Albertsons. The acai juice, Samazon, that's retailed at Whole Foods. Seventh generation, Ben & Jerry's, Patagonia. So Vanguard firms that stand for social and environmental responsibility. Would you think of any of these as not being profitable? These are all extremely profitable and large, large companies that have adopted this, and especially with Ben & Jerry's, which is actually owned by a publicly traded company, Unilever. So a key takeaway here is that, yes, the B Corporation certification rewards companies for being socially and environmentally responsible, but it's also a comprehensive set of metrics for businesses that are just doing good business, and they're going to be around for the long term. You see, I think King Arthur Flour has been around for over 100 years, maybe. That's what I was thinking. It's over 200 years. So sustainable business models, financially sustainable. So B-Lab, the founder story. I mentioned that I had volunteered with the B-Lab public policy team. I worked with them on their white paper, which helped get the benefit corporation legislation adopted in states like California, as well as the 12 others, where it's now passed. Pictures of 2 of the 3 are up here. There's 2 because these are the founders of a company called And1. Who's heard of And1? Show of hands. Okay, cool. So And1 was a basketball apparel company back in the 90s, competitor to Nike, Adidas, those sorts. They were famous for got a name built around. You can tell from the kind of edgy logo there on the right side. For being really edgy, they would do these the dunk contests and sort of street basketball contests in the streets of New York. They started as a screen printed T-shirt business, so it would have catchy logos and sort of in-your-face sayings on T-shirts. They'd screen print them and sold them on the streets of New York. They turned that to a $250 million company. So experienced, seasoned entrepreneurs. Both of them have degrees, I think graduate degrees from Stanford. And what happened? They scaled it. They turned a T-shirt business into a $250 million company. What happened? The company reached its carrying capacity. These competitions they were doing in low-income neighborhoods to have these edgy street ball tournaments, they wanted to turn over proceeds from those tournaments to local schools to build educational and athletic programming. The investors in the company weren't cool with that. Traditional fiduciary duties say, hey, you've got to create the largest return that you can on our money. We're going to talk more about that in a second. So the story of B-Lab is born out of entrepreneurs who built a company with a mission and a vision at its heart that they wanted to reach out to these communities to sell compelling gear for basketball players, but also give back to the community. When they reached scale, they couldn't hold on to that vision because the investors weren't on board and they didn't have a legal architecture that baked in that mission into the legal DNA. So they sold the company. Jay went to Costa Rica, hung out, went with his wife, did some yoga, and then he came back and said, you know what? I'm going to change the game. We need a new legal entity that allows entrepreneurs to do good and make money at the same time. So traditional corporations, there's a case called Dodge versus Ford. How many people have heard of Dodge versus Ford? If you got an MBA or taken a business law class, you're thinking of law student in the audience. This case essentially stands for the principle, arguably, that in the state of Michigan, it was a Detroit case dealing with Ford, the owner of Ford Motor Company. He wanted to pay his employees a living wage. Why? Because he just wanted to treat them well. Not because he had a measured, calculated strategy for bringing that back to the bottom line. It wasn't all of this new, this is back, I think, in the 60s, so they didn't have all this new research showing that, it's not all about money. There are other sources of motivation for employees. They're going to actually encourage them to be more productive, and it will make your company more profitable. So he just wanted to pay the employees a living wage because he wanted to treat them well. Investors sued. He lost. Can't do that. Revlon versus McAndrews. This invented something called Revlon duties, which means that when you sell the company, you have to go for the highest dollar value. This is the issue, or one of the issues, with the Ben & Jerry's sale to Unilever, and why it's taken 7 years to come back and get Ben & Jerry's B Corporation certified as a subsidiary. And that's with Unilever, which is a really responsible company. So essentially, the Ben & Jerry's sale to Unilever was arguably, argued by the general counsel of Ben & Jerry's, who might know, a forced transaction. So Ben & Jerry's wanted to hold on to the company. They wanted to keep doing good their own way. They received an offer. They were considering offers. They received an offer from Unilever. They thought, this is a huge publicly traded company. They're going to rip out the mission. We're no longer going to be able to hire ex-cons to work in our ice cream shops. We're going to have to integrate with their value chain, which we don't want to do. They couldn't turn down the sale opportunity because it was a higher price than other offers, and it was a higher price than they could actually raise from venture capital firms they knew. They tried to raise their own money to hold on to their own company. They couldn't do it. Similar story to that of Jay and Bart at B-Lab. So they invented benefit corporations with the purpose of doing two things. One, to allow companies to do good. First of all, it's just insane that you're not allowed to hold on to your company and continue to do good. Now, I understand the investor's perspective. They invested in a company not knowing maybe that this was a part of something that they would want to do down the road. Fine, let's communicate. Let's have that discussion with investors, but let's make it part of the legal entity that we're allowed to do good. Also, let's make companies accountable to doing good, so that companies that are just claiming that they're saving thousands of children, or any of the other claims that you see on the really pretty marketing campaigns, how do you know that the company is actually doing that work? You don't, unless you're going to get a class action for fraud for purchasing $5 bottles of shampoo from Walmart, and you get everyone together somehow and you say, oh, fraud, because they said on the label that they were donating shampoo to poor kids. That's not going to happen. So we need a legal entity that actually internally holds them accountable, so investors can actually have a right of action to enforce claims of the companies that they're doing good. So benefit corporations, your takeaway. First of all, it's a legal entity, unlike the B Corporation certification, which we're going to talk about in a second, which is a certification. So the first takeaway, the benefit corporation is a legal entity. The B Corporation certification is a certification. Seriously, that's the takeaway. And the benefit corporation legal entity was formed to, one, allow companies to do good, and two, hold them accountable to doing good. Some features are that benefit corporations have a public purpose and a duty to consider their stakeholders. You have the option of specifying a specific public benefit purpose in your articles of incorporation if you have a targeted impact that you want to create. And perhaps equally importantly, if you have a targeted impact that you want to market as a part of your legal DNA and say, look, it's in our articles of incorporation. We have a specific purpose. We're legally accountable to doing this. If that's really what you stand for, put it in there and market that. The third feature, third-party standard and transparency. You're required to report according to a third-party standard. It doesn't specify which third party you have to report according to. B-Lab offers the B Corporation Impact Assessment, which is one of the standards you can use. Doesn't require you to do that. There are hundreds of other standards out there. The B-Lab and B Corporation certification have a great PR and marketing engine behind it that are making that increasingly known to the public. Finally, a shareholder right of action. Some states it's called a benefit enforcement proceeding. Other states it's just a traditional derivative action. All but 2 of the states don't allow monetary damages, so you don't have to worry about having to disgorge profits or disgorge personal earnings because you didn't do what the investors thought was in tune with your personal, your public purpose. It's just about giving them a right of action to hold you accountable, or to at least have that discussion about how are we pursuing the creation of public benefit. How are we considering our stakeholders? And so that's one of the things that we do at B Revolution with business consulting is baking in. How do you consider your how do you consider your stakeholders so that your shareholders don't get mad at you? That's the legislation. Happy to answer questions on that later. So just a quick slide on the movement itself. Again, 13 states in 3 years. Well, now it's 4 years. Big states that are coming up: Delaware, Texas, Florida. They've already got most of the major ones, New York, California, Illinois. It's already done. So the movement is already happening. Over 4,000 impact assessments have already been completed. Over 600, I think over 700 now are actually certified. It's about a 2x per year growth rate, which you can see. The exciting thing about 13 states in 3 years is that the LLC didn't even pass that quickly. And how prominent is the LLC now? So you're looking at what I would argue is the corporate governance architecture of the 21st century. Quick overview of the certification. We already talked about some examples of other certifications: organic, fair trade, LEED, organics for products, fair trades for how the labor used to produce products. LEED is the buildings and the standards used to produce the building. Other standards for reporting standards, GRI, ISO series, you guys may have heard of those. B corporations are unique because they're comprehensive, look at 140 points of analysis across the business, including governance, employees, suppliers, the actual business model itself. And it makes those, it takes those metrics and turns into something comparable. So important for investors, important for consumers, maybe important for talent. So all three of those stakeholders that are building this movement, you're scored out of 200. There are specific industry addenda, so if you're working in a specific industry, there are specific impacts that you're creating, you get credit for that or discredit for that based on how you're doing. It's also size weighted, so it attempts to account for differences in size between a huge company that's maybe publicly traded, doing 100 million a year in revenue versus your average startup doing 200K a year. Maybe that's not your average startup, but hopefully it's your startup. Rob's going to talk a bit about leveraging the certification. I was going to do a quick overview here, but I'm going to let him do the deep dive because we're short on time. And just a quick plug, while Rob's coming up, Rob, come up. We've got a workshop in March that essentially, the really quick snapshot that we're doing right now, we're running as an accelerator with the goal of doing two things. One is actually getting companies that participate in the accelerator B Corporation certified by the end of the week, which if you've tried to do it on your own or have worked with us to do it, it can be a long and intensive process. So we're going to drag you in, we're going to give you tons of homework, and we're going to try to get you certified by the end of the week. And the second thing is to actually get you ready to raise capital. I'll be passing around flyers for that accelerator in March shortly. With that said, Rob Bickel.
Thank you, Dirk. I will not speak as fast as Dirk, who we're very lucky to have on his day off from providing legal disclaimers for radio spots. B Revolution is not responsible for the property of this ad. Results may vary. All right. So the process and strategic benefits of becoming a B Corporation. I just want to dive a little bit into the process, which I will skim due to time. There are basically four parts. There are some prerequisites to sort of have under your belt. There are some pre-B steps to take before you dive in. There's the actual certification process itself. And then finally, there are ongoing efforts that are required by being a certified B Corp. So, prerequisites. Some of this should be stuff that are prerequisites for literally just starting a company, like having a mission and vision, although you'd be surprised how often entrepreneurs sort of fail or decide to tackle that after they raise some money. You have to have 6 months of revenues. So B Corporation is set up to certify companies that are actually producing revenues. They are not certifying ideas or business plans. They are certifying actual companies with verifiable revenues. They don't have to be good revenues. They certainly don't have to be profitable revenues, but they have to have 6 months of revenues. And you have to be, with some exceptions, an LLC or a benefit corporation, or in states where there's no benefit corporation legislation, an S or C corp. There's a lot more nuance to that I don't have time to get into. But all right, so getting set here. You actually have to alter your legal language. So if you're an LLC, you will add language to your bylaws. If you're a C Corp in a non-benefit corporation state, you will alter your articles of incorporation to include the language that Dirk talked a little bit about concerning addressing a specific, a general public benefit, and it depends on state by state for the benefit corporation legislation. And you will also need to organize your materials. You will need your articles of incorporation. You will need your bylaws. You will need your ownership, any options. All these things that you would think about it as a very, very friendly, gentle audit. And then recommended stuff that you will need before you get into it are things like policies, which a lot of young companies don't have written out. You have ideas of what you want and what you don't want. It's always a good idea to actually write this out. And it's a lot less onerous a process than some of you might think. Policies don't have to be, you know, a 500-page employee handbook. They can just literally be a couple paragraphs on where you want to source your materials from, or the kind of employee environment you want to have. Ownership materials, as I said, and any impact tracking systems. There are, especially on the environmental side, there are a lot of questions concerning greenhouse gas emissions and electricity usage. Literally, you can start taking a look and making sure that you're not throwing away your electricity bills, and you can track your electricity uses. All right. Once you've got all that taken care of, it's time to go. Your certification process. The assessment, as Dirk said, is about 140 questions. It's being continually improved and updated. Actually, in between two assessments that we were helping clients with, they completely revamped the site, so it looks completely different. The questions are largely the same. The idea is that the questions will get better and better as they certify more and more companies, so that they will get better at determining impact. You have to score 80 out of 200, which any of you who can do math and went to school is a really low bar. Everyone in my class, in fact, I think the SATs, literally that's just signing your name. So it's a little bit more challenging with the B Corp assessment. You have some opportunities to score in different categories. It's not a foregone conclusion that you will get an 80, but you have to get there. And then they will ask you to upload documents. There is an interview to fact-check the claims that you have made. And then finally, there is a registration fee. It is not, yes? Yes, yes. And that's what the interview is for afterwards. The question was, it's a self-assessment. Yes. You do this online. You could do it at your leisure. You could do it over the course of a year if you feel like it. You can keep coming back to it. Once you're ready, you hit send, and someone, a nice, helpful person from B-Lab will call you up and arrange for an interview, at which point they will ask you questions about your assessment that raised some concerns or flags, and they will adjust your score accordingly. And then you will pay a fee. Most of you will pay probably about $500, which is the low fee. It goes all the way up to $25,000, I think Ben & Jerry's is paying, which seems like a regressive tax as opposed to a progressive tax, but maybe that will alter in the future too, and they'll have a super fund. Yes?
What is the reason for having such a low bar?
The idea is, if any of you are familiar with the concept behind carbon trading, is that they want, first of all, they want adoption. They want to get adoption. And second of all, 80 seems like a low bar, but the questions are weighted differently. It is actually still a challenge to get that 80. It's still possible to fail to get 80 points. Second of all, the idea is that you will be reassessed every 2 years. And there are a couple of things. They will make the questions harder. So they will weight it in such a way that achieving the same performance will actually require more effort. Also, if you think about it, as you scale, it becomes increasingly, if you have 0 employees, it is much easier to score. You don't have to worry about the worker section. Once you now have 25 employees, it's quite possible that you won't do as well, because for some of you, it won't be logistically possible to pay everyone a living wage and provide 6 weeks of maternity leave and all these wonderful things that would get you a higher score. So that's another reason. It's to speed adoption, and then also to slowly set the stage to raising the bar going forward over time.
And what is the implication of getting a lower or higher score external? I mean, you know what I mean? What's external?
That is a very good point. The implication of getting a lower or higher score is what Dirk was talking about, comparability. So if you're in the same industry as someone else and you have a score, people can, or certainly from the investment community, but also remember, you're not being just scored. If you could see these numbers, you're being scored on each of these categories. So investors might be looking, they might not care about your environmental impact. They might only be caring about your community impact. So it's the ability to compare these scores on a granular level as well as on a total level. All right, and the ongoing, you have to submit an annual benefit report, which can literally be the top sheet from your impact assessment. And that has to be a third-party standard. You can also use the GRI if you're so inclined. You have to pay an annual fee, and there is biannual reassessment. And this is where that score mapping comes into play. You will take the reassessment. It may look slightly different from the last time you took it. It may be harder to get the same score. And also, you have to submit to random audits. This is not like the IRS. It's no reason to start sweating bullets. It is generally a friendly audit. However, they will look through your logs. If you say that you have an environmental tracking system, they will ask to take a look at that, and someone has to open up a laptop and show it to them. So they're serious. About 10% of companies every 2 years get audited. That might change over time. Okay, I'm getting the hook here. This is the assessment itself. It assesses governance and workers, community, and environment. And this is the sort of raw score that you get at the end. The impact assessment itself is 120 plus questions, up to 140 now, I think, depending on what kind of business you're in and your size and scale. The report is confidential. It shows areas of excellence. The idea here, and the reason, the emphasis that I want to place is, the impulse might be to just take this assessment and get that B Corporation certification and put that into your marketing materials and not think about this. This process is a valuable opportunity to take a long, hard look at your business. It gives you insights into two things. One, the ability to attach real data to the things that you care about most. And two, the ability to track things or to look for things that you might not have thought was important to you, but might, it turns out, be important to you, might certainly be important to your customers, to your stakeholders, and especially given the context of this room, your investors. So you can compare against other B Corps, you can compare against your industry, and then you get, in fact, I think we just already saw this slide. So this is fine. You can leverage this for your customers. You can leverage this for your efficiencies and also for your impact. All of you are thinking of social enterprises. Impact is an important part of your business. The B Corp assessment is an ability, it gives you a lens into tracking that impact. The benefits of being a B Corp, roughly, there are external benefits, which include trust from your stakeholders and access to market, and I'm not talking about investment market, I'm literally talking about customers who might be willing to pay for an environmentally or socially responsible product. You see that with organic, you see that at Whole Foods, you see that with Patagonia. You see B Corps selling into Whole Foods that get free press about the fact that they're B Corps, as well as having an organic product. Organic is now so pervasive, it's no longer a differentiator. The nice thing about becoming a B Corp now is that it's early enough. There are only 700 B Corps out there across dozens of industries. You now have the opportunity to use B Corp as a differentiator. The long-term hope is that B Corp will not be a differentiator, but for the time being, it is. You get to put a badge on your company that says, yes, we are better. We are better than our competitors. Socially responsible investing and networks. B Corps, Dirk and I went to the B Corp Champions Retreat. There's a little bit of kumbaya and arm linking, but at the same time, it is a very serious community effort, and they are trying to build that community. And there is a very great effort at mutual collaboration, mutual support, and actually that can help you in the assessment. Literally, some of the questions are, do you source or do you use suppliers that are socially responsible? What is the evidence of that? And B Corp is an evidence of that. So if you decide to use your office paper from New Leaf Paper, which is itself a certified B Corporation, that will help you in your assessment. It also helps your environmental footprint, and so you can accrue these sort of net triple wins, double wins. Internally, it allows you to differentiate from your competitors, as I said. There are discounts. Salesforce provides discounted services to certified B Corps. There are discounts from other B Corps that B Corps provide to other B Corps as well. It allows you to consider and establish frameworks for stakeholder relations. And as Dirk mentioned, talent. You can acquire talent. Alan touched on this too. This helps you with your story. We are a responsible company. Over 2/3 of people say they have a preference to work for a company that is socially and environmentally responsible. For MBAs, it's over 80%. This allows you to attract talent by saying, we are responsible. Not only that, because you're a B Corp, they know that they probably have in place benefits for employees that other companies might not. The other thing I would like you to think about in terms of B Corps is, in terms of the benefits of B Corps, is mitigating risk. You're mitigating market risk from your consumers because especially if you are marketing an environmentally responsible product, you will be held to a higher standard or a socially responsible product. This allows you cover, if you will, from backlash. A good example of this is Apple with their suppliers. They got into a lot of trouble with Foxconn and the employee suicide situation. Since then, they've had, and that was a year and a half ago, since then, they've become very involved with the Fair Labor Association. There was just a report about one of their suppliers that was using underage labor, child labor. Apple got no bad press out of this because of their involvement with the Fair Labor Association. The B Corporation, I'm not saying it's a magic shield, but it allows you a certain amount of protection to mitigate the risk of consumer backlash. Supply chain risk, similarly, because it imposes a bit of rigor on how you source your materials or your services, you will protect yourself from finding out that one of your suppliers is doing terrible things or is involved with slave labor or child labor, for example. The idea is effectively you will, it's not a guarantee that it will, that won't happen, but at the very least you'll be able to say, no, look, we're a B Corporation. You can actually see in our report, we have policies and procedures in place, and we are acting according to those. This supplier did not live up to that. And operational risk involving talent, health and safety, employee well-being, all of these are covered within the assessment and allow you to mitigate against those risks. And on the other side, because mitigating risk is a little less sexy than maximizing opportunity, branding. Branding is a huge opportunity here. Strategy optimization, this allows you to look holistically at your company and maybe say, we are going to pull all these resources behind a particular track of impacts, financial as well as social. And then finally, there's possibly the opportunity for a blue ocean or a complete business model reinvention. Some of the questions actually on the assessment actually deal with, do you have an environmental or socially responsible business model itself? And you may suddenly realize that rather than just selling a product, you can sell a product that leverages underserved population as a talent pool and suddenly catapult your social enterprise into a whole new level. In terms of brand positioning for your B Corporation, I love what Alan was talking about with story, because B Corporation right now as a concept is a story. It's a developing story. And the guys at B Lab are branding experts. They are pushing this. They just released their rock stars of the new economy, including Seventh Generation. There's a huge amount of free press available to B corporations, and you get to tap into that story. Not only a given opportunity to tell your story, but to tell the story of other B Corps, and to tap into the larger narrative of social enterprise in a meaningful way. You get to, and this can translate into your pricing, into your stakeholder relations, and ultimately create a much more enduring narrative for your brand. This is the multi-attribute decision analysis that Dirk was talking about. I won't dwell too much on this. It's a little bit wonky. But basically, the idea is using the B Corp assessment to manage trade-offs. All of you will face trade-offs. You're already facing trade-offs because you're starting a company. You're trading off between time with your family, you're trading off between income and pursuing your dream. Well, as you start a social enterprise, there are trade-offs as well. There's a company here that deals with solar. Environmental products tend to focus on the technology, and there's potential to ignore, say, the people side of things, and vice versa. If you have a social impact-oriented enterprise, you might not think about or prioritize your greenhouse gas emissions. This process allows you to convert everything into a common currency and figure out exactly what weighted mix of impact you want, so that you don't have to necessarily say, I can't think about that. You can think about it, and you can put it into the mix. You may not put a high premium on it, but at least it allows you to think about it in a meaningful way. And finally, the value chain. And I'll stop here. The value chain is the sum total of your activities. This is your business, as envisioned by Michael Porter. It's not just your business, it's all the social and environmental impacts of your business. You can actually holistically look at all the impacts of your business, taken out from all the way back to your sourcing, all the way through to your margin, and in one fell swoop, describe, define, and improve your value proposition to your customers and to your stakeholders. And with that, I will see the microphone.
Thank you, Rob. Gonna miss the yoga slide. It's my favorite one. All right, so now I'll introduce Jacqueline Hunter, who is the head of our business planning and capitalization practice group, also the president of Be Revolution Capital, the network of angel investors that we spoke about earlier. And she's going to take you through about a 20-minute presentation on how to raise capital and do business analysis for your. I'll shut up here. Round of applause for Jacqueline.
I'm going to stand over here. A little different visual. All right. So I'm going to give you a brief overview. I know we're short on time, but first off, I'm going to talk about the early stage capitalization, then impact investing, finding your investor match, give you a brief overview of our business planning, financial modeling, and pitch development process, then go over our investor criteria for what makes a good deal, and then finally talk about how you can use B Corp certification in your capital raising. So first off, just to give you brief terminology about the stages of capitalization. Generally, these are, there's a variety of different criteria and different categories that you can call the different stages of capitalization. So this is just an example. So the first stage is seed. This is when you're just getting started. Most of your investors are yourself or your friends and family, and you've really just got a concept in mind or maybe even worked on your business plan. Then next, you're in the startup phase. You're starting to talk to angel investors, potentially some incubators. This is when you're raising a little bit more money, you have your management team developed, and you generally have a prototype or some sort of beta ready to go. And then the next stage is the early stage, this is when you're looking for more capital, speaking with angel investors, VCs, and you actually have some revenues, some site traffic, users, and then also your break even is in sight. And then the final stage is the growth stage, and this is when you're looking for the capital to really scale up your business and expand it, and you're talking to VCs, potentially even banks for some debt funding. And at Be Revolution Capital, our focus is really the startup phase. Maybe you've bootstrapped your company, you've got some really good traction going, and you're looking to talk to some angel investors. So there are different types of investors. Just to give you a quick overview, when you're first getting started, you're generally going to be working with friends and family, or as some say, fools. And these are your non-accredited investors. And then as you grow and become a more serious business, you'll look to talk to accredited investors, which are your angels, VCs, incubators, banks, and institutional investors. Now, the different types of funding. So At first, you're most likely self-funded. This is called bootstrapping, and you're putting in your sweat equity. That's how you're earning your money. Your equity in the firm is with all your hard work. This is really great for lifestyle businesses. You maintain control, full control of the business. But if you're looking to become more of a high-growth, scalable company, that's when you're going to start looking for different types of funding. So those could be occasionally debt, which is most likely, really difficult as a startup because you don't have the revenue and the historical financials to show to debt providers. So you're going to be looking more at equity funding, which for you is, much more cleaner investment. You don't need to necessarily pay the money back if you're funded, and you share the risk with the investors. And this is really great because you get the smart capital. So along with the capital that you get, you're getting connections within the industry, and you're getting experience. But you do have to deal with dilution. So this means that your share of the company, you're giving that up to some of the investors. And then, of course, this is for the high-growth company. And so when you look at the pie of equity, although you may not have 100% anymore, you will have a smaller percentage of a much larger company. And what's becoming increasingly interesting for companies and investors is looking at convertible debt. And this is debt that needs to be paid back or it gets converted into equity, normally at very good terms for the investor, a discount rate. And the new form of funding, which is crowdfunding, right now there's rewards-based crowdfunding where you can get perks for investing in companies, and then shortly we'll hopefully be seeing some equity-based crowdfunding. So when we're looking at impact investors in general, there's a very large spectrum of these investors. On the right, we have here the more traditional investors, and these are your investors that are interested in the return on investment. They're your typical venture capitalist, and they're really focused on your exit strategy and how they're going to make money. Then on the other side, we have your more impact-focused investors. These are considered your philanthropists. They're more patient, and they're really interested in what sort of impacts you're going to be producing. We see with B Corps that the investors in B Corps are more in the middle. They do care about the return on investment and the profitability of the company, but they're also concerned about what kind of impacts you're producing. So when you're talking to investors, you really want to know where they're at on this spectrum. So just to give you a quick overview of the domestic early stage impact investing scene, there's a new report out from GIN, the Global Impact Investing Network, and JP Morgan, and they did a study of impact investing in 2012, saw that there was over $8 billion invested in impact investing assets. And now they see that in 2013, there's over $9 billion committed. So you can see this is a growing asset class. We're really happy to be a part of it. So as an early stage company looking for impact investors and navigating that scene, you really need to know the difference between those investment groups out there that are looking at impact investing or in those that are more mainstream. So it's definitely a balance between the spectrum of impact investing. And then we also have several new incubators, accelerators, and venture fairs popping up that are just focused on impact investing. So you really have to think about positioning your deal and what type of investors you're interested in. So then the next piece is really matchmaking with investors and trying to find which investor fits on your level of the spectrum. So that's what I'm going to be talking about right now with looking at the industry preferences. So when you're searching for investors, you really want to see, are they focused on clean tech? Are they focused on, community impact? Are they focused on sustainable consumer products? Those are really the key to finding your investor match. Then looking at the deal size they're interested in. Are they looking more at deals from 1 to 500K or $1 million and above? Then the stage and traction. Do they want to see a prototype? Would they like to see that you have some revenues? Every investor is different. Another important criteria for investors is location. Some investors, especially angels, are very location focused. So if they're an angel group that's based in Southern California, they only want to look at deals in the Southern California area. And then the next key piece, again, like I mentioned before, is if they're traditional, impact-focused, patient, or return-focused. And then also if they're looking for a scalable business or more of just a local lifestyle investment, a lifestyle business investment. And you can really find this out by digging deep into their portfolio companies and seeing what investments they've made previously and how and if you fit into that category. So now I'm going to walk you through our business planning and capitalization process so you can get an idea of how we do that with our clients, and then see if there's any way that you can use our process to help your own venture. So the first step in our process is to do an analysis of the critical decisions you need to make to actually implement the business. Then we follow that up with doing research, financial modeling, and business planning, then ultimately going forward with researching investors and raising capital. So I'll give you a brief timeline of this process as well. So these are some examples of the critical decisions that we look at for each business venture that we're interested in working with. We first take a look at how differentiated is their business model, what is their revenue model and what are the other potential revenue models available to them, what is their scaling model, their business structure, the management team and board and how developed it is, what are their potential partnerships and how developed are those, and of course their marketing strategy. Now there's several different types of critical decisions, but this is all the part of doing your due diligence on your own business venture. After we have our key critical decisions in mind, our next step is to research our assumptions and try to find the answers to those critical decisions. So we do a variety of different types of research. We do market research into the customer and what they're looking for, where are their needs that are not being currently met. Then we look into the industry. Who are the key players in the industry? And how do you fit in that industry competitively? That's followed up with, a deep competitive analysis. And then what I like to call pre-due diligence is looking at your business from the investor perspective and really finding those gaps or holes in the business plan and the risk associated with those and proactively solving those issues. Then the next step is to start doing research into your potential partners. Who can you collaborate with? Who can you work with to really get this business off the ground? And then last but not least, the cost-benefit analysis of all of these different options, which leads us to the financial modeling. So we have a lot of fun using Excel and developing different financial models for our clients. And what we do in these different models is create the structure of the business and test out our different decisions and strategies. And this usually evolves into a best case, worst case scenario, and of course, a most likely case scenario. So, and what's interesting about our financial modeling is we don't just do your financial projections. We also look into the impact projections. So integrated into the financial model is also an impact model to see, for example, if you are a solar company and you're doing, so much revenue, what is the energy savings that you're correspondingly creating with that? So really integrating your financial model and your impact model. And so like I said before, we're really using this process to predict challenges, proactively solve problems, and of course determine a couple key things you need to do to start the capital raising process, which is determining the amount of capital that you need to raise and what are the uses of those funds, and then of course having a valuation. And we've found that having a really strong financial model really gives you leverage in the term negotiation process with investors. So the last part of the business planning, of the whole business planning, capital raising, or business planning process is, of course, writing the business plan. So what we do is we create a document, but we really don't feel like this is the actual reason for doing business planning. It's actually more about the process and developing your ideas. So then you have a roadmap to implement your business and optimize your success, and also have a way to track your performance according to what your goals were in the plan. And of course, you do need a business plan to share with those investors. So the last part of the process is once you have the great business plan prepared, you're going to go and get ready to raise capital. And so we really recommend developing your investor pitch in a variety of different levels, 30 seconds, 3 to 5 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, so that you're prepared for all different types of situations. So just when you meet an investor one-on-one and you give your elevator pitch, or comparatively when you're doing a formal presentation to a private room of investors. The next part is to practice your pitch, and of course the Q&A. So when you're giving your pitch, one of the most important parts is actually not the pitch itself, but the question and answer session. This is when the investors really dive deep into, if you really know what you're talking about. And the last part of the capital raising process is to matchmake yourself with investors by doing your research. Get out there, like I said before, and find your match by really profiling each investor that you're talking to and finding out what they're looking for. And there's a variety of ways that you can get in touch with investors. There's 2 platforms here that I mentioned, Gust and Mission Markets. Gust is an online deal management platform that we use and several other angel investment and VCs use. And Mission Markets is a newer platform. It's a B Corp, actually, and it's just for social ventures. So this is a typical timeline of our business planning and capital raising schedule. So first we start off in about 2 months. We do analysis and research, financial modeling, and business planning. At the tail end of business planning, we start to do our investor screening because we know what your business looks like and we can start to match you with investors. Then developing your pitch coaching, your presentation tailoring to each investor, and then eventually after connecting with investors and finding a good match, doing your term negotiations and getting your capital and getting launched. So from the earlier presentations, does anyone remember what is the most critical aspect of the business plan according to most investors? Yes, you're correct. It's the management team. So this is really essential, and these are some of the reasons why and things that they're looking for. So, of course, developing your management team is one thing that you should be working on all the time, getting ready to pitch for capital. So this is just an introduction to our investment criteria. Of course, so this is basically what we look at when we're looking at deals. First off, we look at the impacts. So the benefits that you're providing, the metrics that you're using to measure those impacts, how scalable are those impacts, and of course, it really helps us out if you have a third-party certification so we can actually verify those impacts. Then we look at the market. What is the problem or the pain that you're solving? What is the market size potential? And have you identified your customer? What's going on in the industry? Any barriers to entry? How you're distributing to this market? And of course, your special sauce. Next, your business model. How great is the solution to the problem that you've identified? How innovative it is it scalable? What kind of IP protection do you have? And have you gained any traction or momentum and developed any partnerships? Of course, like we mentioned before, the management team, your industry expertise, your experience, and do you have a really helpful, supportive board of advisors? And it's really critical, the financials, that you have a really strong financial plan that's viable. You've backed it up with a lot of research. And really looking at these key factors, that your cost structure, your revenue structure, your margins, and your customer acquisition rate. And of course, if you have historic performance, it's really important to include that in your financial models. So we're not just looking at your projections, we're also looking at what you've accomplished so far. And of course, we do our own due diligence to check to see if your assumptions are realistic. And we want to see things like, of course, we look at your growth projections, the hockey stick, and see if that's really something we can verify with some of your research, and then your monthly burn rate and how conservative that is. And then, of course, the investment, so the terms. What will you be using how will you be using your funds? Have you put any skin in the game? Have you raised any previous capital? Do you have a realistic valuation? And what is your exit strategy? And how viable are those? And these are just some of the tips for putting together your pitch. Of course, like I said before, research your investors. What is their screening process? Every investor has a different process that you need to follow. You usually have to do some sort of application or submit your your profile to their system. And, of course, you have to have your business plan, your executive summary ready to go. And a lot of the best investor connections I've seen have come out of just pure networking. Getting a referral to an investment group can go a long way. So these are some of the things that you need to get ready to pitch. Your 30-second elevator pitch, your business plan, your detailed financials, your longer pitch, plus your Q&A preparation. And you always want to be persuasive yet conservative at the same time. So now, where does the B Corp certification fit in? These are some of the reasons why having the B Corp certification is important to investors. The B Corp certification provides some supplementary methods for valuation. So when you look at some of the analysis of the B Corp certification, it actually helps them really analyze the risk of your company and helps them really look at your valuation. And then your rigorous performance metrics. The investors can actually use the B Corp certification to determine your key performance indicators and also goals along with those that they may even include in a term sheet. Of course, the B Corp certification, as you've seen before, really provides a lot of transparency for the investor. They can see things that normally you probably wouldn't share with an investor. And that's one of the great things about the B Corp certification is that if you are providing really great impacts, you are rewarded for that. For an investor, having the B Corp certification is excellent for being able to compare different companies because you can see compare companies in different industries or in the same industry looking at these impact metrics and, of course, customize that to your particular, the type of deals you're looking at.
Good afternoon. How you doing? My name's Chance Barnett, co-founder and CEO of Crowdfunder. This is Ray First, my partner.
I accelerate possibilities at Crowdfunder. Longtime serial entrepreneur and angel investor, impact investor, social entrepreneur. So I'm excited to be here.
Thanks. So I'd love to share with you a little bit about what we're doing at Crowdfunder, why we're doing it, what impact we're looking to make, and then what I think is a very interesting opportunity for social entrepreneurs and impact investors, if any of you might be in the room. So what are we doing first at Crowdfunder? What are we? I got involved in crowdfunding legislation about a year and a half, maybe even longer ago, although it seemed like 3 or 4 years. There's some other people in the room who've been involved in that process, like Howard. What we're focused on is creating access to capital for entrepreneurs across the US. And ultimately, we're also working on that globally. If you're a tech company and you're looking to start up and build the next scalable software business, you can throw a rock and hit an angel investor or an incubator who wants to help fund you. If you're a great social entrepreneur and you have an innovative business, it's much harder to find that investor match. You can't throw a rock and just hit someone who might be interested in funding and going along for the ride. Nor is it as established in a mainstream way to help people understand what you're doing and invest and help you. So one of the things we're focused on at Crowdfunder is helping people who exist outside of the traditional Silicon Valley epicenter of investment and helping them find access to capital. And so while our name is Crowdfunder, we approach that in a variety of ways. We focus on helping social entrepreneurs, social enterprises, for-profit companies with impact goals. We focus on small businesses, and then we do help tech startups as well. And we do that through a combination of both rewards or donation-based crowdfunding and through actual investment crowdfunding. So we've helped that process in changing the law. I got involved first in Congress in around November of 2011 and helped change some of the laws that are now shaping and going into place that will allow for you as an entrepreneur for the first time to be able to use the web to build your own, what I would call social capital, and leverage those relationships and the trust and endorsement you might have in your community and let that lend a voice and speak well for why you might be investment ready, why you might be a good bet for your community or other people who might not know you to help back you. So we're interested long-term on helping people build a community, both locally and with people who are interested in their mission or their values. And specifically, what I want to share with you is some work that we're doing around social enterprise. I'll skip through this, but I want to give you a real quick sense of the scope of this opportunity. That is the access to capital that can be created for entrepreneurs in this business through crowdfunding. Right now, there's around $30 trillion in personal savings and investment accounts in the US. That's your and my money sitting in Wells Fargo or Bank of America, or in a mutual fund, an IRA. Right now, that money generally does not ever get into the hands of small business owners, of social entrepreneurs like some of you in this room. One reason that wasn't happening is because there was a structural problem with the mechanics of that did not allow that to happen. So if you could unlock that, and in fact, that's what some of the laws that we've helped change will do, if you can unlock a portion of that $30 trillion in capital, and over a several-year period, let's call it 5 years, let's be conservative, let's call it 10, over a 5 or 10-year period, if you could just unlock 1% of that capital, that market would be a $300 billion capital market. To give you a sense of scope, that's 10 times larger than the existing venture capital market last year, total. So if we just moved the money that's sitting around that only gets reinvested in Wall Street public businesses, that only gets put in banks so they can lend it out to big, giant construction companies who don't need the capital. And we could put a small portion of that to work in our entrepreneurs and in social impact businesses, then we would have a market that would far surpass the general venture capital market. That's why I'm here. That's what I love doing. I love helping early stage entrepreneurs. I love helping people with their vision, and I know that's part of why Rafe is here too. So let me give you a quick 2 seconds on the industry evolution of crowdfunding. I don't want to assume that you know all about it, but a lot of people have heard about things like Kickstarter. So as the industry started, there were creative people like bands who, let's say they had album sales in the past and fans, but they had spent all that money on parties and who knows what else that I can't talk about right now. But they wanted to go back on tour and they wanted to fund that. They found out that the web was a great place to rally that fan base and to get money to pre-fund those initiatives. So the industry was really born on a creative collaboration where people found out that you could collaboratively fund a larger project and a larger amount of dollars through many small contributors. That has evolved over a period of 10 to 12 years into a much more, quote unquote, dare I say, mature industry of something like 1.3 to 1.4 billion estimated for this coming year. So there's a significant collaborative funding movement happening, but there's been a barrier in the way that's prevented it from being aligned directly with businesses or social enterprise. That's been a regulatory barrier that on the legislative side in policy has now been lifted. However, we're still waiting for the regulators, the SEC, who actually govern the implementation of this legislation, to implement it. And so that's something that Howard and other people like myself are working on to push the SEC to actually finalize these rules for us. But I'll get into a little bit of that timing in a minute. So that's really what I see as this shift from this crowdfunding 1.0 world where it was about donation and about projects and about transactions that happen on a small basis, $25, $50, where people became a backer of something that they thought was interesting, and more on an impulse basis. Now that this regulatory barrier has been removed and we're about to launch this entirely new capital market that I call crowdfunding 2.0, and that is directly aligned with businesses. That is about allowing people on the web to build a long-term relationship with a business owner, with an entrepreneur, or with a social enterprise, and to support them not only through their backing or their voice, but even with their dollars, and helping become an investor and help push that company forward. So what we've focused on as one of our core personal passions, Rafe and I as founders of the company, and is what we see an important market to give an ecosystem of investors and entrepreneurs connecting to on the web and offline, is social enterprise. And so we've focused on this as one of our first verticals and the one we're most personally passionate about to create and accelerate a market for impact investing. And so our approach and philosophy is not that we're cool web founders that think we're just disruptive and we're going to change the world, although wink, wink, of course, we kind of think that. We're crazy enough to try and do this, to be doing it, so of course we feel that way. But our approach is really more about getting into and serving existing communities. And what that means for me, what our philosophy around that really boils down to is that if you're talking about raising investment in a company, you don't want to necessarily go out on the web and find a bunch of anonymous people who don't know you. You might think you do if you're trying to raise money, but you actually don't. What the best outcome that you can create for yourself as an entrepreneur, or for you as an investor to be able to create if you want to find great entrepreneurs to invest in, is to be part of a real world ecosystem and community where you get to know founders, where you get to know people, where you're surrounded by other successful mentors or advocates, and you're actually part of a group that educates itself and builds meaningful relationships. This is how investing is done in the offline world, and it's going to be something that's augmented and reinforced on the positive side by this new social network that will develop this. And so our approach to community is we don't want to go and find the anonymous people on the web to transact. We're serving the communities where people are already building relationships. So that's why we've gone to the existing communities where a lot of these social entrepreneurs live and are served. Rafe, do you want to share a little bit about some of our partners and the communities that we're working with?
Yeah, sure. Be Revolution is one of our social enterprise partners, and we put together, a partial list that you see here. But as Chance was talking, I was kind of smiling because, rather than tell you, what we're doing in this area, I'd like to show you. And so, actually, can you skip to the? Okay, so.
All right, the cat's out of the bag.
Let's. And I'm just so excited about this. I can't wait to get to it. So, what we're doing, actually, what you're doing, because you don't know it, you're already part of Crowd Impact. Crowd Impact is we are collectively putting together the world's largest live pitch event ever, specifically for-profit social enterprises. We've already collected over $100 million in capital that's looking to invest in for-profit social enterprise into the room. It's going to be right here in LA, and you guys are invited to go onto your computers right now and pre-register, and it's so simple. Just go on to Crowdfunder, click on Community, and you'll check out, it'll say join the social enterprise community there, and bam, you're pre-registered. So what does that mean? On April 23rd, we're going to have this live pitch event, capital partners, people ready to invest, cash prizes, in-kind prizes, and it's a who's who of social enterprise and impact investing. What am I forgetting here?
Well, I guess one of the reasons why we feel audacious enough to do this is we've actually validated this contest model previously. So we didn't just get up here and say, hey, let's try and get a bunch of investors in a room and see if it works. We've spent the last year building our platform, and we've done a couple of contests that were focused initially on tech startup communities. We did one in Las Vegas with Tony Hsieh and his Downtown Project. That was a $500,000 investment prize, and we had over 3,000 online participants and around 150 companies that entered. What it means to enter one of these contests is to create a company profile on Crowdfunder and allow the crowd to support and vet and rate you and talk about you. And over a process of 30 or 45 days, then the crowd selects some of the top companies collectively, as do some expert judges that are investors and venture capitalists and mentors in that community. And then those top people then get to pitch at a real world live event for the capital. So there's not just one winner in that scenario, there's multiple relationships built. Every company has the equal opportunity to get the visibility of the crowd, and the top ones get more because they earn it. So we've done this also in LA. We had 8,000 online participants on Crowdfunder and 720 companies enter. And now we're focusing this validated contest model on social enterprise. So it brings it together, like I said, the online world where we cast a wide net to help bring attention to entrepreneurs. And then we narrow that down to a very select pitch event where then we try and create really great outcomes. So that's how it works more tactically, but you can enter for free and be a part of it right now as a social enterprise. So there's some of those stats. We also, like I said, we have our contribution-based fundraising model that's happening right now, where we allow people like Quality Social Enterprises. This is This Shirt Helps. That's Listen Headphones. Listen Headphones is a really stylish company that has great headphones that for every pair of headphones sold helps restore hearing to a child in a deaf school. So we're helping support these, allowing these companies to raise contribution-based investment. Oftentimes this is pre-purchasing of a product. But the important part of this is that not only does this help generate potential customers and it's marketing for them or dollars to buy inventory or help their business, but these types of businesses will then also be doing investment fundraisers on Crowdfunder. Now they've built a community of hundreds of existing contributors who are also customers. And so they will leverage that into a fundraise for investment on Crowdfunder. And so the opportunity that goes alongside this contest is that immediately we'll be turning on the ability for people to apply and to look to go out on an investment fundraise. We can't take that public today, but we are vetting and looking to select a few top companies to help more privately among our base of accredited investors. So the opportunity is more than the contest, but that's the core free, simple value proposition. Where this all heads, there's a tiny bit of uncertainty, although we have ways to address that and still add value, is that we're going to take everything that we're doing, all of the great companies that are working with us and all the investors that come onto our platform during these contests, and actually start doing the fun work of crowdfunding. Imagine that. So we'll be launching a private network for accredited investors very soon. That will likely kick off during Crowd Impact. So I think that'll be an exciting piece of things. We've also focused some efforts internationally, and we'll be kicking off through a localized team we've developed in Mexico as our first step on a more global network for social enterprise and for impact investing. And then you'll see the SEC most likely rolling out these laws to allow for accredited investors to invest and be solicited more publicly, probably around April or May. And then for non-accredited crowdfunding, every day you and me investing and seeing these opportunities, probably around the end of the year, so end of 2013, early 2014. And so this takes the communities that we've been building locally all across this country and then next in Mexico and really helps connect them for a more global funding network.